I was chatting to Bart Kay on his channel a week or two ago, and I mentioned something about the carnivore diet not being extreme, but just being something basic. And that kind of got picked up on in the comments, so I thought I'd expand on that in a video. I think if we really look at anthropology, we can see that every culture has eaten meat predominantly, and so many cultures have known that it's a reset food. If you're sick, you take yourself back to meat and fat. And this is what we're discovering again. If you're really ill, you might just have to go back to beef and water. It's totally safe. It's safe long term, as long as we understand that. Some people might have to go raw. Some people might have to incorporate fasting or dry fasting. And that's great too. But it's just, if we could accept it without all this ridiculous dogma. There's so much, noise. There's so much noise on all levels in diet. In everything, really. In diet, though, we're told this, we're told that. And so some people never even move beyond diet. I want to show how not only is it a reset food, but that enables you to move even further beyond diet. I'll come to that later in the video. So if you look at, say, Miki Ben Dor, Miki Ben Dor is a researcher, Israeli researcher. I'll put a link to one of his talks below. You can really give yourself confidence that this is something that we've always done. Humans have always done. So with that accepted, moving on, there's, my book, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. I called it that because when you get really sick, the whispers become shouts, and you have to hear the message over all the noise. This is why people get inspired to do something, but it wasn't always like that. We were much more in touch with ourselves. But because I got that sick, I could ignore the dietary advice, which wasn't working, the old conventional stuff, and really get onto other stuff and things beyond diet. So, that was why it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So I'm going to use a bit of a drumming analogy here to show how simplicity can reset. So, say you're learning a groove for a song. For somebody who doesn't know what that is, it's the actual rhythm that you play through most of the song. And it might be a reasonably complex one. And so you kind of play it. You might get it quite fast, and you listen to it and it sounds pretty good. So you record yourself and it doesn't sound right. There's something wrong and you can't quite pick up what's wrong. You think, is it that complicated bass drum part? Is my right foot letting me down? Is this? So you really listen. You think, no, hang on. It's just that little double stroke on the left hand. So you go back to the drawing board and you drop out 2 limbs. And you just take 2 limbs. You just take the left hand and the right foot. You forget your left foot, you forget your right hand, so you can focus in on it. It's like dropping things out of the diet. So then you get to the point and you think, actually it's a technique problem. It just wasn't my right foot at all. It's something in the left hand. And you go back and you practice your double strokes and your rudiments and your snare drum technique or whatever. And maybe you'll fix it. So then you can think, okay, well, it wasn't the right foot. Everything's feeling good now. You record yourself. It still doesn't sound right. Sometimes it might not. And then you can get onto even subtler things, because sometimes it's just a matter of changing your perception. The way that you look at the drum groove and the way that you've got your mind focused as you're playing it. And you can just say, you take shift your focus from the bass drum that you thought was the problem to the left hand. And just by putting your attention on it and thinking about the groove in a different way, even though your hands and feet are doing the same thing, you find that the whole thing falls into place and it feels absolutely beautiful, and you listen to it back and you want to start dancing. So how does this relate to diet? Well, if you take everything back to basics, the noise goes, and not only can you see which foods that you are sensitive to if you want to reintroduce them one at a time, like you reintroduce one limb back at a time when you're practicing the drums. Not only that, but you can, as when we're in drumming, you focus on a different part of the groove and everything falls into place, you can suddenly see, hang on, I'm on the most basic diet now. There's something still not quite right. Maybe I'll sort the light environment out. So you get the light on, and that things get better. And then suddenly you think, well, there's something I'm worrying about all the time. There's something, so you can start to look at the emotional things and reset that. You know, it's exactly the same way that it can take you further into your musicianship or further into your health. All these things are very, very similar. So when you can see subtler areas of life, because you're not so confused by all the information out there from dietary guidelines, governments, vegans, all of that sort of thing. When you can see things much subtler, things don't sound like woo-woo anymore. All these things like emotional balancing, that kind of thing, the light, you know, when people are hung up in diet, it's there's so much noise that you don't get to see those subtle things. This is why I called my Facebook group 100% Carnivore and Beyond, because I wanted to see where it was taking people after that, you know, into their emotions, into their light environment, into their relationships, that kind of thing. When the body's calmed down, you're not always thinking about chronic pain or how you're overweight or whatever. You know, you start to see these things. So when I do a consult with people, I you know, some people come to me with diet problems. Some have already got the diet sorted, and I think, well, what's this going to be about? And you listen to their lifestyle, you listen to their worries, to their fears, and when they reverse those, sometimes the last of any issues that they were struggling with disappear. And that's what's so cool. That's when people say it's one size fits all. There's no one size fits all in diet. Well, it's true in one sense, but in another sense it's not, because there is a one size fits all in that everybody has the same areas to fix, the ancestral disconnects, but the proportions might just be different in different people. You know, it's funny when you think back to ancestral times. Obviously we can never really see what's happening, but in indigenous tribes we can get a good idea of it. And they just did what they did. You know, when they went out hunting or something, there wasn't like a neighbouring plant-based tribe, the cretinous vegan cockwombles or whatever, they wouldn't turn up with placards saying save the bison or save the colobus monkey. You know, they just got on. If they raided you, they were more interested probably in raping your sister or nicking your winter supply of pemmican. So, you know, this hasn't been a problem. All of this nonsense hasn't been a problem for so long. The TV that we've got, the worries about the mortgage, that kind of thing. These tribes, they weren't science-based. They were much more intuition-based. And we've lost our intuition due to so much noise and so many ridiculous influences coming in that we have to be told what to do. And most of the way that we're told what to do is nonsense. So they'd have a shaman or something, and you could go to that shaman and say, I had this weird dream, I got bitten by a snake, or my leg fell off, or something like that. And he'd say, okay, well, and work with you and say what this might mean in relevance to your life. Imagine going to your GP, saying, well, I had a bit of a weird dream last night. He'd just go, listen, fuck off, and come back when you've got diabetes or autoimmunity, you know, or your head's fallen off or something. You know, we've had to go so far into the gross before we do anything. We've lost our subtle perception. So if you can get rid of a load of these things, if you can get rid of a load of the crap foods, and, you know, beef and water, that's the basics, bit of fish, go back to that. Get rid of TV for a bit. The constant barrage of always being connected to your phone. Not only is it the EMFs, but it's the constant noise that we have to have in our heads. When you do that and go back to a time when you can be happy with your own company, happy with your own thoughts, you can discover what is beyond carnivory. What are these things that people understand as woo-woo, but they aren't? because you'll have subtler perception of things. The chatter dies down. Also, I mean, a lot of people will think of this as woo-woo, but once the chatter has died down, the power of those subtler things become greater, because you've got less trouble from where all the input that was coming in. Some people can't even be alone with their own thoughts. So if you're not if you're not completely full up with TV, Wi-Fi, Cocoa Pops, pizza, that kind of thing, it's funny. So Jack Kruse, he's always saying about light, and how if you get the light right, you get your environment right, you can eat shit off a shingle. You can eat absolutely anything. Probably you can. Now, the simplicity of carnivore, I love it, so I stay with it. I've never enjoyed the food more, and it's totally safe long term. So I stay with it. It's a basic diet. It's wonderful, and the cravings for other things die down in time. So there we go. That's Carnivore and Beyond. Is it an extreme diet, or is it just a basic reset? The veganism is obviously the fad. This isn't a fad. This has been going on forever. So have confidence in it, and you've no idea how far beyond the diet it can take you. That's about it, really. Just before I go, if you're watching this before April, or April 2019, or preferably before January the 31st, if this goes out just before then, you might have a few days. Just to remind you, look at the Eventbrite link below. Raffle tickets left to win an €1,100 place at our retreat for €10. So have a look at that, and you'll get access to the videos anyway if you go in for that raffle, which will be $49 when they come out in May. So everybody wins. But I'm mentioning this apart from just to get you in on time before the offer closes, but also because some of the people that we have talking at this retreat are going way beyond carnivory. Some people think, why would I sit there at a retreat and be told how to eat meat? These are the subtler things we're going to be talking about, and hopefully lead you to be able to figure them out in your own life and really, really start living a full life on all levels. And carnivore is just a first step. So there we go. Simplicity, basic, not extreme at all. Thanks for listening.